Welcome to Night Shift. Jeff Sharon here along with you. We got Eric Lopez. We got the student in the game, Kyle Nash. We got Nick Borselli joining you for our return from the bye week special. We're halfway through football season already. And we are coming up on one that UCF fans have had scheduled on. They have been circled on the calendar for quite some time since that Big 12 schedule came out, with UCF going to Norman to take on the Oklahoma Sooners. So we got that. We got plenty of soccer to talk about, which I know Kyle's really excited about. We have plenty.
I'm always excited for success. There's nothing wrong with football when you are ranked at the top of the nation with that. I mean, come on, respect.
That's right. That's right. It's baseball that you hate. We've got
kickball, please.
We've got volleyball to talk about, but let's dive in with UCF football. So again, follow us on every podcast channel that you can possibly imagine. We are available at blackandgoldbanneret.com. We are also available on social media on x.com/UCF_banneret_SBN. We're available on Threads. We're doing a lot more on Threads these days too, by the way. Shout out to Bryson Turner, who's been captaining that situation. We've got Instagram. We've got our YouTube channel where we are doing all the other things that we have where we are putting a lot of our post-game stuff, including some stuff that Eric Lopez was finding from earlier in the week. And we will start with UCF against Oklahoma. All right, boys, here we go. Both these teams coming off of a bye week. Oklahoma, top 10 team in the country. They proved it against Texas. They've been enjoying, gloating, beating Texas, though, especially the way that they did for the last 2 weeks. And their reward coming off the bye week is playing this UCF team that is 0-3 in the conference. Hopefully a little bit healthier. Kyle, we'll get some details on that in a little bit. The spread right now opened up at 19.5 in favor of Oklahoma. It has since dipped to 18. The over-under is 66.5. That's gone up from 62.5. What's the story right now, Kyle Nash? Because the big question is, will John Rice Plumlee be healthy enough to play?
I mean, that seems to be an emphatic yes from what we're hearing, right? Regardless of whatever little pops were heard with him coming onto the field at Kansas and all that. And, everything I've seen, everything I've heard, everything that's been alluded to is that John Rice Plumlee's the starter. If he's healthy, he's going to go. And it seems like he's healthy. And listen, this is what we were forecasting back, after the Kansas State game, right? When we started to see things such that it was, and we got more information about what was going on with Plumlee's injury. And I think I'll put it this way. I always thought that this was the best time to bring him back after that bye week. I waxed poetic on Night Shift a couple weeks back. I listened to it, through the blackandgoldbanneret.com. Bing! And with all that in mind, I didn't mean to be necessarily prophesizing that it would go as wrong as it did, not necessarily, but I say all that to say, back even weeks ago, I thought this Oklahoma game would be the opportunity to bring John Rice Plumlee back after the bye and all of that.
I mean, that was, I do think that was the plan. Eric, I want to bring you in on this too. My question is, to what extent will he be effective against OU, at least at this point? Because I mean, this knee injury that we've seen, fortunately, nothing really bad happened in the Kansas game. And I thought it was a pretty prudent decision by him. Now, I don't know if we had any confirmation of this, but it was a pretty prudent decision by him after that third possession to be like, hey, I don't have it today. Get Timmy in there because I'm a mess. This ain't going to work. But is he healthy? Do we think he's going to be healthy enough to be effective? And Eric, I want to go to you on this one. Because, without his mobility, there's not much to be done here.
Correct. And we may not know until he literally steps on the field and gets hit for the first time. I mean, that's kind of what happened in the Kansas game. He got hit, didn't feel comfortable. That he probably didn't feel comfortable with the brace on. Who knows? That's going to be the big question. We won't know until the game. And they do need him at 100%. To have any chance here, a puncher's chance in this game, he has to be 100%. Because he needs his legs. Say what you will about his passing game, whatever. It's much improved, but he needs his legs. He has to be versatile, and we'll see if he's 100% healthy in that environment. And this is a big game for him. I think this is a landmark moment for him to have an opportunity to really put a signature game in his career. His best game is probably that regular season Tulane game. Didn't really matter at the end because they played Tulane again and lost. But there's going to be a lot of eyes on him, especially with who the quarterback is opposite of him, which basically he replaced because he was the guy that started the year after. So I think this is an important game for him, and I think it's important for him for the rest of the year. If he comes out limping again or is not healthy, then you have to wonder if he's going to be healthy the rest of the year.
Yeah. One other interesting point that I wanted to make, and I looked at this from a statistical perspective. Oklahoma, 28th against the rush, 85th against the pass. Kyle, how does that factor in? Because you can only play who you're up against, right? So you got to attack where at least they're weakest. Oklahoma, at least, I'm not saying they're weak. I'm saying their weakest point seems to be
right
against the pass. So could that favor John Rice Plumlee? Could that favor Timmy McClain? Because later on in the game against Kansas, Timmy seemed to be quite comfortable attacking downfield. Granted, it was garbage time, but still.
No, and to the point you're making, Jeff, listen, 101 is this, and this applied even to, even some Jags games I'm covering. This is applied to other UCF games I'm covering. This is football universal, okay? This is something where if look at it from Oklahoma's perspective, right? If you're Coach Venables, you're going to dare a possibly not 100% John Rice Plumlee to beat you in the air, okay? Listen, I've seen that you guys have a great running attack with RJ Harvey and company. I've seen that your offensive line is getting nominated for awards, even though they're getting regularly beat on because of the weaknesses of the defense and that situation with the linebackers, and people just have transferred that blame over the offensive line. No one's acknowledging the fact that they're way better than they were last year and don't even have a secured starting five due to injury and all that. Yes, I'm sticking up for this offensive line, completely different from last year. I understand that. But if you're Coach Venables, you've noticed all that, and you're going to be like, all right, we're going to attack that run. We're going to make sure that Richardson doesn't break off big plays, that Harvey is contained, and that we stuff McDonald if you try any, wildcat funny business. If you go with that 5-cat, we're going to stop it. And beat us over the top, Plumlee. Let's see if you got what you have, and if your knee is good enough for you to throw the ball reliably at any distance. And let's see if our DBs can handle battling against Javon Baker and Kobe Hudson and see what happens from there. And if those passes complete and Oklahoma's forced to step back, to your point then, Jeff, now Gus can really get things cooking with a balanced attack. And gentlemen, every game where they've had luck and things go on offense, it's been balanced attack. Think back to Kansas State, where twice they had the lead. They weren't in trouble until the ears were pinned back and they had to throw the ball.
Oklahoma's got depth on the defensive line. I also want to point out, I'm a little disappointed in you, Kyle, a student of the game. You've brought this up to me millions of times when it comes to stats. Oklahoma's blown a lot of teams out. Of course, what are teams doing when they're behind? They're bailing on the run and throwing the ball. So keep that in mind when you talk about the Oklahoma pass defense.
Right, but you could be getting bombed and then throwing the ball effectively or ineffectively. That's the other thing.
Yeah, well, and I'll say this. Say what you will about Oklahoma's defense being better than it has in the Lincoln Riley era. We see how USC is struggling. There's no shock that that's possible. But I don't know that they're the juggernauts. And Eric, of course, you mentioned a great point. You could call it disappointment, but hey, listen, it's your day to say you're welcome. Maybe I gave you an opportunity to point it out. That's all. But with all that in mind, though, and listen, that's a good point. But I don't feel like Oklahoma's necessarily bombed any good programs, right? Their schedule, I had been critical of Oklahoma until they came out and beat Texas. And frankly, Dillon Gabriel has not impressed me overall. People are like, oh, he's the Heisman candidate. No, he's not.
Second pick. He's the second popular pick right now behind your boy Penix.
No, he's not. No, he's not.
I'm telling you what the odds makers are saying.
Okay, well, the odds, I mean, who actually know college football, not somebody who's trying to make a living out of it this many weeks ahead. By the time New York comes, you better bet Panix is going to be in there. Come at me in November with this, all right?
The 4 guys get to go to New York.
And 4 guys do get to go, and one of them's also going to be Marvin Harrison, I feel like. So, but I'm not saying Dillon won't be one of the 4. I'm telling you he's not in the top 2, and nor should he be, all right? His passing acumen is 1 touchdown pass in a big game. If you look at the
biggest game of the year.
No, it wasn't. He didn't throw any passes in Oregon and Washington's game. So there's that.
No, Oklahoma, Texas is a bigger game. I mean, I'm sorry. Oklahoma, one of those, that was a marquee. That's the rivalry in the sport. One of the top rivalries in the sport. Nobody gives a bleep about Oregon, Washington. If they did, they wouldn't be moving to the Big Ten.
Listen, and this is why you're incorrect about the Heisman Trophy as well. Apparently, the Mason-Dixon line is where college football stops for you. But the punchline is this. You like that one, didn't you? No, but with all the,
I should charge admission to this.
The SEC has given plenty of reason to think that, and they're on a down year. So we're expanding the map a little bit more this year. Okay. No, but and listen, I talk that smack. This isn't that I think Oklahoma and Texas wasn't a big deal. In matter of fact, people were starting to take Texas seriously until they Texased again against Dillon Gabriel and company. But the thing I want to hit here, Dillon Gabriel ran in that game the way I tried to tell people he could run back in 2018 and nobody wanted to hear about. So that's what, again, I think is the real danger for UCF's defense. Here's a shock. They're going to have trouble with the run. I know. Really broke some boundaries pointing that one out. But I think it's going to be Dillon Gabriel on the ground that's going to shock people, and UCF fans are certainly going to be calm and collected as they respond to that fact.
Let me bring up a couple of things, because Eric, I do take your point about the competition that Oklahoma has played so far this year. But 2 weeks ago against Oklahoma's pass defense, Quinn Ewers went 32 of 38 for 371 yards. And I forget how many touchdowns.
Yeah, Texas quarterback. Yeah, that's fair.
But, and so it kind of wasn't his fault that they struggled there. Or excuse me, he was 31 to 37, 346, 1 touchdown, 2 picks.
That's where it was his fault. Yes.
Okay. But still, in fact, Gabriel, by the way, 23 to 38, 285, 1 touchdown, no picks. But he did run for 115 yards. Okay. 44.
Yeah, he's a part of the running game now. To Kyle's point, I mean, he's right there with Marcus Major and Tyree Walker. I mean, he's right there in the yardage. He is a big part of the running game. It's going to be a key.
Well, he was the only.
And who's going to spy him? Who's going to spy him?
The other 2 guys didn't reach 50 yards.
Right.
In the
game. Weird thing is, this is not a good Oklahoma running team. Like if UCF struggles, Kyle, against Oklahoma's running game, if they get blitzed again and pushed around, then that pretty much wrap up the season. It's done.
Yeah.
Because if you're struggling against OU's running game, this is actually the opposite of what they've been facing in Kansas State. The offensive line is good for Oklahoma, but they're a pass-first team.
I mean, the main good news I could offer from this standpoint is after this Oklahoma game, and again, I know we had our exchange about which was the bigger game. It's really a 1A, 1B. Let's be real. But with all that in mind, like I think the Big 12 schedule overall gets easier after this point. I'm not here to say they're going to, win out or anything ridiculous, but I could see UCF picking off 3 more wins to finish out and get the bowl game still. So after after Oklahoma, I do believe the schedule gets easier. So there's that to consider.
Let's address the crimson-colored elephant in the room and the intangible nature of the Dillon Gabriel situation. Okay. I'm not going to talk about socks.
Oh,
Kyle, I have some socks for you if you're interested.
I'm not. And listen, I think that, we here in UCF land are going to look for any little shred of evidence that, that Dillon Gabriel may have thrown shade at UCF in some way, shape, manner, or form.
Yes, it's called comments.
I don't think he meant anything by the whole, like, seeing what college football is really all about. Like,
not at all.
I don't think he was implying that at UCF. UCF is not what college football is all about.
No, not at all. Not at all.
But let's face it. there are guys on this team who remember what happened in 2021 very clearly.
Absolutely.
Okay. Thought that he had a chance to come back. And Nick, I want to get you in on this too in a second. Thought that he had the chance to come back, chose not to. And the day after the USF game announced, he was out.
Yeah.
And
on my birthday.
That sticks. Yes. Happy birthday, Nick. And that still sticks in guys' craws.
Listen,
they can say what they want. They could be like, oh well, I mean, look, water under the bridge, whatever. I'll guarantee you there are some guys on this roster who are like, I can't wait to get another shot at this team.
Oh, I bet Ricky Barber is ready to put a hole in his stocking. See how it wasn't a sock joke? Anyways, no, but with that in mind,
they're really comfortable. In fairness, they're really comfortable.
Does that earn a ding?
I suppose. No, but listen, I bet anybody who's on defense, especially if they're a member of that defensive front that played opposite Dillon in practice,
TMB,
for example, there's going to be, you're absolutely right. There's going to be a little extra funk on it. There's going to be a little extra motivation.
Yeah, by the way, though, the motivation's both ways. You don't think, trust me, those players at Oklahoma are going to make sure Dillon does well against
those
UCF.
Players at Oklahoma don't care the same way though.
Like, they do for their teammate. They do for their teammate. They do. Oh yeah.
For the mercenary that came in later.
Yes.
I don't know, man. I don't know.
They're going to win for him. That's the motivation.
Not there, but there's degrees to this game, Eric Lopez.
Yeah. There's a difference between punching up and punching down.
Right
here.
I'm going to tell you. And I wrote about this on blackandgoldbanneret.com.
My man.
Thank you. If you don't think this game's personal for Jeff Lebby, who wanted this job and begged and just cried to the UCF players, please promote me on social media for the head coaching job. I want the job, Kyle. I want it badly. And he wants that job. He wanted this job, ignoring all his baggage behind the scenes with him, with his father-in-law. This is big for him and for Dillon.
Being his father-in-law.
Yeah. And I think for Dillon, I think he wants to set the score. Like, he wants to win. I think winning's the most important thing.
Sure.
But I think he also wants to say, look, I'm a pretty darn good quarterback. And for those of you, not all of you, but for those UCF fans that took jabs at me for not winning the big game and the sock jokes and everything, I think he's going to add a little extra spice to it. There's no doubt in my mind.
First of all, the sock jokes are his own darn fault, because you don't go and hawk your merchandise while you're hurt and then run off once you have the money in hand. That's on him. Let me be clear about that. And listen, as a defender of young Dillon Gabriel, as the guy who called he would start over Brandon Winbush, as the guy who tried to remind people constantly that he could run, that people would just had a shadow of Mackenzie Milton still in their heads, in my opinion, that were keeping them from using an overly mobile quarterback. Listen, Heupel had been hurt before. I get it. But that all being said, I think the game will be big to Dillon. I don't think anybody argues that part of it either, but I'll give him this much credit. I had Orlando Sentinel's Matt Murschel on the Student of the Game podcast, and he informed me.
Oh, wow. What a plug. What a cheap plug there. There you go. Big name dropping.
The reason why I name drop him specifically is, as somebody who's a local media entity, Dillon Gabriel took the time to talk to him. And that's a classy move. I don't care who you are.
Oh, no one's arguing that he's not well versed in the art of public relations.
I will say this. I will say this in devil's on the other side of the coin on this, because I've talked to a lot of Oklahoma people up there. I'm friends with a lot of people there. It sounds like he has matured. I think he's matured since he left. And remember, and again, I'm not defending all of it. I will say this: that whole Gabriel thing, that was when this NIL and the portal was all new to everybody, right?
Yeah.
It's not as routine as it is now. People still get agitated about it today, and I don't defend on how he handled it. I think there could have been a lot more honesty there, and just, is what it is. But he was a young kid. We've all made screw ups. I think he is, from what I understand, every player loves the guy, and he's been very friendly to fans. He's signed. In fact, he has signed autographs and the shoes and stuff. So I think he's grown a little bit since the UCF days, in his defense.
No, I don't think there's any debate about that. I think the real issue goes back to insofar as there's any like real vitriol towards Dillon Gabriel, the legit stuff, I think, and the stuff that may have a real effect on what happens on Saturday is the guys who were teammates with him in 2021 and made it because there was a real perception within the locker room that he was trying to come back. He would come back. I think it was the SMU game, wasn't it, Eric? That they were thinking
it was as early as SMU, and then on our time, the series, they were talking at length about maybe the USF game.
Right, and there was well, the SMU game, because I remember there was distinctly a I think he was hinting on social media about it, and there was still a possibility that if UCF won that game, they could have gotten a shot at the American Championship game. He didn't come back. Kyle, you're shaking your head.
I am because he's one to cry wolf and like, oh, maybe I'll come back. Maybe I'm trying to call back. Hell, the dude even did that with McKenzie, teasing that he would come in and play some time with USF. And I didn't buy it at the time either, but I still had to report that he said it, and he still had to portray it. This is him.
Okay, but is it his fault that we all took him at face value though?
Yes, he's portraying it. If he's this genius of PR, which he may not have been at the time, and that's to Eric's point about growth, but if you're going to say it, somebody out there is going to believe it because they don't know you're lying, and you're a quarterback for their team. They're going to take you with that kind of value. This is what having fans is. So if you're going to float BS, don't be surprised when somebody believes it because you got the platform.
Oh, yeah, no, I agree with you on that. I just say, it's just his teammates believed him too.
Yeah, but players also understand this is a business now. So I think we're overblowing. Like, I don't think every player.
It was a business back then too, Eric. I hate to tell you, but
not to the same extent though. Remember, the point made is that NIL was new and not everybody was laughing about it, right? Remember, hey, listen, I remember covering Leonard Fournette at my first Citrus Bowl. He's skipping a bowl game. Right. Now a required question is, hey coach, who's skipping the bowl game this year? Okay. It's the same concept, guys.
Sure. I'm extracting that as a drop, okay?
If you'd like.
But here's the thing. Game. Obviously, if this game, which should have been played in Orlando, and I think the Big 12 avoided this because I think it would have been a negative reaction. He would have been
okay, yes, but it would have been
big time negative. Right, Nick, you're the people. You sit in the stands, Nick. Right. You would have been ugly.
It would have been pretty toxic. No.
Yeah, students are flicking off like FCS teams.
There you go.
Oh my God!
Are you sure it just
don't do that?
Full of fashion faux pas with their footwear?
Don't do that.
They sent us these universities sent every student an email that basically said, "Please stop using profanity at the other team," and that was against Boise, who we have no connection with. Now we have a connection to this team. Oh my God!
There would have been a lot of socks.
It would have been pretty. It would have been pretty.
I'll tell you what, you wouldn't hear anything situation. If it was out here, you would not hear anything on TV because they need to bleep everything out.
But yeah, this game should have been in Orlando. They chose not to avoid all that. I will say this though: this is not a popular opinion. I get it. Dillon did the right thing at the end of the day. It's worked out for him. He wouldn't be playing for Oklahoma right now if he didn't sit out that year medically. That it worked out for him. I mean, he's where he wanted to be, and he's got a chance here to make the playoffs and win a Big 12 championship with Oklahoma, which he would not have had that opportunity here.
Well, let me throw a little bit of shade on that one for you, Eric Lopez. Now, we talked about this off air, but I want to go to Kyle and Nick specifically on this. All right. Dillon Gabriel's career stats, if you break them down between UCF and Oklahoma. All right. How many games has he played for UCF? Has he played? Let me ask you this, Kyle. Has he played more games for UCF or Oklahoma in his career?
Oh God. Because he missed so much time as he did. That's going to be pretty close at this point. It's getting closer for Oklahoma every week. I can tell you that, but he missed time at Oklahoma last year too. So it's closer than you'd think.
26 career games at UCF, 18 at Oklahoma. So 8 games left. If Oklahoma plays 14 games, he plays in all of them. It's going to be split right down the middle. Okay.
Which I guess theoretically, mathematically, he'll never catch up to his UCF time then at this point.
No, he could. If they go to the Big 12 championship, that's 13 games.
Oh, okay. You're right.
If assuming they go to a bowl game after that, that'll be 14. If they go to if they go to the playoff and then the championship, that's 15. So
I didn't account
all right.
for postseason. Yeah, my bad.
Let me ask you this statistically: completion percentage higher at UCF or Oklahoma? Kyle,
I'm going to say higher at UCF.
Nick,
Yeah, okay. I'll say UCF too.
Oklahoma 66% to 61%. Here's where it gets interesting.
Smaller sample size.
Yards per attempt higher at Oklahoma or UCF?
I'm going to say UCF.
Nick,
Who throws it more?
Well, it's not about the quantity, it's the distance. Yeah.
No, that's what I'm trying to say. Like, I'm trying to think like who liked splash plays more. I just
because I'm using this because I don't want to use yards because that's not.
Yeah, that's fair.
Perfect, right?
Just to be different, I'll say Oklahoma.
Oklahoma, but it's virtually a tie, 9.0 to 8.8.
Oh wow!
By the way,
me.
touchdown to interception ratio virtually identical, 5-1 at UCF, basically 5-1 at both places. Passer rating 160 career in Oklahoma, 162.7 at UCF, 156.9. So if everyone was thinking like he'd be that much better at Oklahoma than he was at UCF just by virtue of playing in Oklahoma, that's false.
Well, hell, and I'll say it before Eric Lopez does. What this really is an indictment of Big 12 defense. Hashtag bet the over, death, taxes, bet the over for the Big 12.
But he's in a better situation. He never would have played in the Big 12. He stays at UCF.
I can't guarantee that because
UCF would not have entered the Big 12 until this year. He would have been out of eligibility.
But let's say he medically redshirted in 21, then he would be playing this year.
Yeah, but Kyle, don't you agree with me? He was never going to stay here beyond like that full. Like he was going to transfer. He didn't come to play for Gus.
Well, and the part that we keep neglecting, is it isn't Oklahoma. That's the only question. Did he not transfer for 30 seconds to be a Bruin?
UCLA, and then Jeff Levy.
Yeah.
And that's
the point.
Yeah.
They'll always have more NIL money than UCF does. Or I should say always, for the foreseeable future, UCLA will have more NIL money. And listen, say what you will about Dillon Gabriel. I have a lot more evidence, despite his class, to show that he has the capability of being a mercenary. So to your point, Jeff, there's no way he would have stayed. I get you.
Yeah, he would never have stayed. He was loyal to Jeff Levy. That's why he's at Oklahoma.
Right. Look,
Jeff Levy.
and that's what I'm
saying. You wrote about this when all the players were like campaigning for him. Who was at the top of that was Dillon. He was never going to stay. So that was never right.
Listen, I can't. And I'm not saying I fault Dillon Gabriel for linking back up with Jeff Levy. SI wrote about it earlier this week. They said he was in the airport getting ready to fly out to LA to go visit Chip Kelly, and Levy called him up and said, "I'm going to Oklahoma and I want you to come there." And I can't blame Jeff Levy's history aside. I mean, put that over there.
Jeff Levy, by the way, who was at Ole Miss and coached
John Rice Plumlee, right?
Yep, that's right.
So, I can't, like I said, I can't fault Dillon Gabriel. It's a relationship business.
Yeah,
but I'm talking strictly from I guess this is my general point. I'm sorry, Kyle. I just want to get this out.
Okay, go ahead.
From a strictly football ability standpoint, right? I always love to see the best of a player that we can possibly see. Mm-hmm. And the thing with Dillon Gabriel that always kind of bothered me a little bit was he went from here to a place where he was comfortable instead of trying to expand his envelope as a quarterback, which I think we saw in the very limited sample size we had with him in Gus Malzahn's offense. He was doing things that he was not used to doing and actually performing pretty well. I think he could have made himself a better pro prospect had he stuck around and played in this different system. He would have, like I said, he would have expanded his envelope as a quarterback. Instead, he goes to Oklahoma. Hey, he's comfortable with Jeff Levy. He's comfortable with Brett Venables and all those guys. Okay, fine. But are we seeing really the best all around Dillon Gabriel we could have seen, or are we just seeing more of the same?
No,
I think we're seeing more of the same. We're not seeing
he didn't run at UCF. He didn't run at UCF like he is now. He's more mobile.
He was in the Boise State game and in the Louisville game.
Under Gus, he was starting to run the ball more.
Right, but we'll never know. Right.
That's the correct answer, Eric. We won't know. I agree.
But he's in a better situation. You can't like whether you like it or not, the decision worked out for him. He's in a better situation for him. For him, he's in a bigger program. He is in one of the biggest brands in college football. He is being taken care of there. Google the NIL of Oklahoma. He's doing fine, to Kyle's point. He would never make that. And he's got a chance to win a Big 12 championship. He's got a chance to make the college football playoff. He's got a chance to make it to New York as a finalist for the Heisman. None of that happens if he stays here.
You know what else? You know what else, Eric? None of that happens if he loses on Saturday. How about that?
Well, that's why this is UCF. No, that is why this is UCF's bowl game. This is UCF season right here. This is you want to make up for the Baylor loss and beat Oklahoma, because there will be a lot of Knight fans that will take big time pleasure in winning this game. I guarantee you this, Kyle. You might just a lot of UCF fans would rather win this Saturday against Oklahoma than whatever bowl game they end up in. No, guarantee you. Absolutely.
No. Yes.
No. See, thank you, Nick. Thank you.
Okay, listen, just because
why not both?
Yes.
That's my
Mexico. Excellent drop, Jeff Sharon. They'll say that this week, and then when they're watching Cincinnati or somebody playing a bowl, they'll be like, "Why are we there?" Blah, blah, blah. You know, they'll
I think they'll be like, well, "How do we not make a bowl?" That's fine. But if they beat Oklahoma, if they were to beat Oklahoma, I actually think,
Jeff, I know that wasn't a perfect simulation, but
if they were to upset Oklahoma, I think that turns your season around. I think we're having a totally different conversation. They would make
having a different conversation. Yes, Oklahoma win puts a shot in the arm. Let's not be dumb here. But here's a stat real quick. There's 3 more wins in the rest of this schedule. Trust me.
But I'm saying that if they beat Oklahoma, you look back at 2023, people will remember the Oklahoma win, like we do 23 years ago when UCF knocked off Alabama in their homecoming. Yep. No, people want to bring away Alabama was terrible. No, it was they beat Alabama.
No one remembers what our record was in 2000.
Correct. Nobody remembers that UCF was what 6-6 or 7-5 that year. They will remember they beat Alabama. It would be the same story. Baby.
Hey, listen, just like UCF remembers that we're the guy that got the coach fired and leave out the part where they made Nick Saban happen. Cool. It'll be the
week. Well, that's significant, though.
That they beat Dillon Gabriel, and he's not a Heisman winner, but then they end up missing the bowl. I get it.
That's short-term thinking, though. But big picture, the Oklahoma game, UCF's only beaten 3 teams in the top 10 ever in the FBS era. 2 of them were in bowl games, Baylor and Auburn. So Gus knows about one of them. The only regular season win that UCF has ever done against the top 10, Jeff and I hung out at a sports bar when they came from behind to beat Teddy Bridgewater in Louisville. This would be the biggest upset win in UCF football history. It would be huge.
By the way, that game, that Louisville win, Eric Lopez, 10 years ago this week.
There you go.
Oh, snap. There's an intangible.
Listen, forget we're playing Dillon Gabriel. We're playing the number 6 team in the nation.
Thank you, Nick Porcelli, for injecting some much-needed context.
Better than playing Tulane in the Fenway Park.
I read it in practice if I'm a coach. I don't want my team thinking about number 6 in the nation. I want them pissed, and I want them tearing down the man in front of them to get to Dillon Gabriel.
That helps. It's just this is every part of context makes this one of the biggest games in school history. It's just a fact.
Yep.
Yeah.
I think the year in school history, or one of them.
The year that we're in, the first year of the Big 12, all of that, I'm not saying it's not significant. I'm not trying to dismiss that. I'm just saying if I'm a player or if I'm a coach, that ain't my focus. Once we win, then we'll talk about how great that was.
As a fan.
Oh, for sure.
It's just a little extra hot sauce on the.
You're not wrong. Nobody.
Listen, this is. I mean, you're going to be on ABC. You're going to probably get 2 to 3 million viewers, depending on how the game plays out, how close it is, and all that. It's going to be more viewers going to watch this UCF program than they are probably the rest of the year, because, folks, the rest of the year's schedule. We're back on FS1 for West Virginia. We're at noon. I'm going to go on a limb. The FS1 crew is probably not going to be here in Orlando hanging out with Kyle for the West Virginia game. We might have a commitment.
By the way, can I just say I feel personally ripped off that I haven't been able to meet up with my fellow Syracuse graduate Eric Collins. Not once yet.
Well,
how many games are they going to do of UCF? And I haven't met Eric once just to say hi and go Orange. I just
The bad news is he's requested not to meet you, Jeff. No, I'm kidding. I'm kidding.
Wow! Whoa!
Holy
Okay.
Moses.
So,
Wow! Kyle, just
Everybody today. Oh my god.
Even I'm like, oh my man.
Now there is another Syracuse alum, I believe. You could verify this. Dave Pash is a Syracuse alum, right?
Yep.
He will be calling the game with former Sooner Dusty Dvorak and then Tom Luganbill on the sideline. That'll be the ABC crew.
See, so there
Not here.
Well, that's because the game's in Norman. They can't do anything about that.
All right. Last word on this game, real quick, fellas. 19.5 was the initial spread. It's now 18. But here's one thing I find interesting because this one thing on OddsShark they show is the predicted score. Have you seen this? Predicted score: Oklahoma 41, UCF 38. So, Kyle, I'll go with you on this one. Plausible?
I mean, I'll put it this way. I've been kind of thinking throughout the week that UCF will cover. I mean, 41-38 is plausible if they get Gabriel to turn the ball over.
That's been the trick, is the defense hasn't been turning anybody over very much. Only 5 turnovers in 6 games. That's got to be fixed.
So, see, here's the thing about it. Up until last week, they've had a turnover every game. And as critical as you've been about turnovers, Jeff, and in the words of Joel Klatt, and rightly so, that's still an improvement from the previous year. So I don't know what to tell you about that part. But I can't say it's implausible, but I wouldn't predict it. That's how I'll answer.
Nick?
To quote Kevin Garnett after he won the NBA championship, anything's possible.
Oh, that was a layup. Eric?
I didn't know Joe Klatt had cliches now that we're like quoting here.
I would have done
so. See, that's how cool a guy Joel Klatt is. His statement his signature thing is to confirm other people's quotes with "and rightly so."
Yeah. Speaking of guys we'll never see.
Eric, what's the case for this being a high scoring close game?
What's funny is Kyle actually brought it up, and he's probably not even aware. He's that smart that he's probably not even aware. He just mentioned the point, and that is play with fire, play with intensity, play with passion, play smart, come out ready to go, because you're going to take a punch, but give it back. Because they took a punch against the second half in the fourth quarter against Baylor. They didn't punch back. They took a massive punch early against Kansas. They didn't punch back.
They lied down.
They lied down, Kyle. You're absolutely right. I think that's what fans want to see more. Obviously, you want to win. But if they don't win, fight, compete, play with pride and passion. And I think if they do that, they'll make this game interesting. If they don't, they will get embarrassed. Mm-hmm. And that's what's at stake on this Saturday. That's a great point, Kyle. You nailed it. That's what it comes down. We can talk X's and O's. We can talk about Oklahoma having a Buckus Award finalist candidate at linebacker that's probably going to spy him. We can talk X's and O's. But you got to play with passion and pride in this sport. Because if you don't in this sport, you will get beat up and embarrassed. Simple as that.
Absolutely.
Especially in an environment like Norman. All right. 12 noon kick on ABC, right, Eric?
That is right. ABC noon with Dave Pash, Dusty Dvorak, and Tom Luganbill will be going up against the Penn State-Ohio State game, so it will not be the most watched game of that slot. But OU's a big brand. This is a big brand. I think this will be the most watched UCF game of the year because I don't think the time slots will be TV slots will be great the rest of the year. But yeah, noon game, ABC.
Well, get a win. You might get some better TV slots.
Dave Pash, by the way, called the first ever ABC UCF football game. You remember which one it was?
Was it the South Carolina game?
10 years ago.
2013.
Right. Yeah.
There's another anniversary for you, Chief.
Yeah, there is. There it is. All right. We shall be following that one as well and be prepared for a little night shift afterwards. I just want to leave. I want to leave this football game with just one last word to quote Ben Crenshaw. I got a good feeling about this. I'll leave you with that.
Oh, look at that.
Oh!
Right. So, let's move over to
Kyle, I'm going to send you my UCF socks if you want them.
Hey, Drew's the collector. Make it.
Nick has some socks too. Apparently, he has the same socks.
Yeah. Oh,
I got
same-
plenty of socks over here, but not the Dillon Gabriel ones.
No, I got the Dillon Gabriel ones as like a birthday present, and then literally a few minutes after getting them, I saw that he was transferring. That's all.
I know better than to get socks of individual people. Especially
I didn't order socks. I ordered a shirt. They just came with for some reason. I didn't.
There you go. Where's that shirt now?
Yeah.
I burnt it.
Yeah.
Oh.
Did you really though? Did you really?
No,
Yeah.
I don't know.
Oh.
I should actually.
I didn't think
You put that thing. Oh,
Nick.
Nick. You are a college student. You put it on eBay. You see what it fetches. That's what you
actually. Yeah, I should do that.
That's what you put it on eBay. See what it fetches. You know.
Yeah, you're right.
It could be anything. If it gets you a tank of gas in your car, go for it.
Yeah, you're right.
You know.
Spoken like a young Dillon Gabriel. Anyways,
Kyle Nash, the student of the game. Kyle, you got to roll, I think, right?
I do, but
Okay.
gentlemen, it was great talking up this game. I'll see y'all on Night Shift this weekend. Look out for night class after the game as well on blackandgoldbanneret.com. But until next time, everyone, class dismissed.
The student of the game, Kyle Nash, the SOTG, on your social media outlets. He'll be covering the Jacksonville Jaguars tonight as well. So, Kyle, enjoy that.
Absolutely. By the way, watch along on the Pro Sports Fans app in the Jaguars Shack. If you in the Jaguars
on everything today.
Is that on the Dixie Bell? Can we watch on the Dixie Bell side like you said earlier? What do we?
The Mason-Dixon line.
Yeah.
Well, hey, it's an All-Ins game. Technically, you'll be on the correct side.
All right. Anyways, thank you.
More plugs than the Christmas tree on this episode, gentlemen. I'll tell you that. Let's go over to football, gentlemen, and talk about UCF men's soccer. Last night,
what a night!
Took it to Coastal Carolina. 5-0 was the final. 4 different guys scored the 5 goals. And your number 2, I love saying, I'm going to revel in this. Your number 2 ranked UCF Knights also caught a break, even though they're 8-1-2 this year. Gentlemen, let's look at that RPI real quick, shall we? Because their RPI is number 2. But West Virginia beat Marshall last night. Number 1 Marshall, who UCF's only loss is 2. And by the way, remember, UCF tied West Virginia earlier this year, 2-2, back on September 15th. West Virginia dropped 5 on Marshall, 5-2 last night. And so my question to you, and Eric Lopez, I will start with you. Could we see a number 1 ranked UCF Knights men's soccer team?
Got to beat South Carolina.
Okay.
Sunday night. Do not ignore that. They still got to play Sunday night. But if they were to beat South Carolina, absolutely, they have a shot. They're number 2. I think it would be either them or West Virginia. West Virginia's argument would be, hey, we beat Marshall and we tied UCF, whereas UCF lost to Marshall. But West Virginia is back in number 5. So that's going to be an interesting debate from the voters. But yeah, UCF, if they were to beat South Carolina, has a chance to be the first ever UCF sports team in any sport to be ranked number 1 in the country, which is just jaw-dropping. I don't even know if we did a poll before the year and asked, like, hey, which UCF sport will be the first to be ranked number 1? I'm not sure men's soccer would have been the first pick by people. I mean, I don't
think it would have been the first pick, but I think if you sit and think about it, I think we all would have thought, you know what, I wouldn't rule it out.
Yeah, no.
Oh, no, absolutely. Agree.
But it wouldn't be, but you're right, it wouldn't be my first pick.
Who would have been your first pick, Nick? What would have been your pick?
Maybe volleyball or softball, honestly.
Honest to God, I would have thought either softball or women's soccer.
Women's soccer would have been my pick. I would have thought, women's soccer would have been the pick.
Yeah.
But again, it shows how they're playing. And, that win against Coastal Carolina was impressive because we've been waiting for this offense Coach Calabrese has to explode. And boy, it did explode finally. That could be huge moving forward. Guys were finishing off. Owedor, the transfer from Oregon State, they've been waiting for him to get some more goals. He did that in the win against Coastal Carolina.
2 of them last night.
Yep, Bella Trash got a goal. So that's huge now. If that offense can come with this defense, which once again gets another shutout, I think that's 3 in the last 4 they've had a shutout. So all things are clicking for them. And look, I've talked to Scott Calabrese about the ranking. They're saying their thing is we're playing for trophies. We're not playing for rankings. But he understands the significance of being ranked that high from an exposure standpoint. I think you're seeing more people attend soccer games because of it. Probably more people tuning in. I think there's a little bit of a bandwagon jumping going on, which is great.
Yeah.
They got a chance to be number one if they beat South Carolina, which is huge. It's not the end of the world if they're not. In fact, there's going to be something that we'll monitor. Friday night is going to be an important night for UCF soccer because I just got word during the Clemson-Boston College men's soccer game on ACC Network at halftime, the NCAA is going to unveil their top 16 seeds if it were today. So we're going to know Friday night, Jeff and Nick, where this committee, how they feel about UCF. Is UCF a 2 seed or a 3 seed, or are they lower? Because if they're a 2 or a 3 seed right now, according to the committee, that means UCF doesn't have to get on a flight until the College Cup. Right. So that's significant Friday night.
That's awesome.
Yeah. Nick, there are 3 games left in the season. 2 of them are on the road. Obviously, Friday night at South Carolina. South Carolina right now in those rankings is a quadrant 3 game in the RPI. Georgia State on the 27th at home. That stands currently as UCF's only quad 2 game of the season. And then the season ends with James Madison, who's right now number 72 in the RPI. So my question to you is, plausible end of the season run here. They finish. Does UCF have to win, Nick, these last 3 games in order to be assured of what Eric is talking about?
I don't know if like one loss will hurt them. All I'll say is,
or even a draw.
Even a draw. I think they can take a draw. I think a draw with maybe a James Madison or something, they'll be fine. But all I will say is, I don't want us to have to find that out. I'd rather just let's win it. Let's just win out, so we don't have to worry about that.
Yeah.
And
the thing we can't forget, they're still chasing Marshall in the conference championship race.
That's what I was going to say.
True.
Like you mentioned earlier, how they're like, we're not thinking about rankings, we're thinking about trophies. I like that attitude, and frankly, that's how I'm starting to think. Because now I'm starting to think, can we earn some silverware, as they call it in soccer? Can we start getting some trophies?
Look at you, Nick, going with the soccer lingo there.
Well, remember this because we still have the Sun Belt Conference Championships coming up, and there is a tournament. It's a straight 8-team tournament. There's no buys, so it's not outside the realm of possibility. It starts on the 5th, by the way. Right now, as it stands right now, UCF would be the 2 seed. They showed this on the telecast last night. UCF would be the 2 seed, and they would play Coastal Carolina again in the first round.
They would host that game. I believe they would host up until now. The top seed would host the semis, or I think the final. The one seed hosts in the first round their game and then the game of their next opponent. So if you're the 1 seed, let's say it's Marshall would host both their game against the 8 and then the 4-5. UCF, if they were to remain the 2 seed, would host their game and the 3-6. So that's big. Okay. I mean, that's big. Do you want to be in that position? If they stayed as a 2, they would be paired up with West Virginia, which obviously is the top 5, top 10 themselves.
Yeah.
That's huge too. So it's a tougher draw, but
heavy tournament.
Top heavy. That's been the story of the Sun Belt. The weird thing about the Sun Belt this year, as strong as it's been, it's actually to some extent, like Kentucky's been a huge disappointment. They were the preseason favorite. They've been a perennial power in men's soccer. They've had a bad year. South Carolina
3-6-4. Kentucky 0-3-3 in the conference.
Yeah, they've been a big disappointment. James Madison, who's ranked in the top 10 early in the year, they've fallen off. And then even this Sunday night's opponent, that's why I'm worried about this. South Carolina is usually good in men's soccer. They've had a down year. So
you can't ever take it even be so.
No, that's especially in soccer where you don't get rewarded sometimes based on how you play. As we know, you can outplay a team and not get, lose or get a draw. So
one unlucky bounce.
Correct. So and the tricky thing that worries me about the South Carolina match, this will be their 3rd match, if I'm not mistaken, the math, in 8 days, I believe, because they played last weekend at Old Dominion, playing midweek here against Coastal Carolina, and now you got to play to South Carolina. That's 3 matches in over a week. You wonder, the depth's going to be pushed here, and Calabrese mentioned this on the post game, which you could watch on the YouTube channel. Their depth, they're going to have to play some guys more minutes that don't play as many minutes. So their depth definitely going to be challenged here against South Carolina on Sunday.
But to be fair, in this game they did do that.
Yes.
And as we're looking at the standings right now, yes, it is top heavy, but I wouldn't rule South Carolina out, even though they've gotten off to that bad start at 4-6-3 overall. They are still tied with Georgia State for that 4th slot.
Great.
Yeah.
So if they do get hot, and boy, what better way to start getting hot than would be to beat us, God forbid. That's something that we would have to watch out for. UCF, by the way, does play Georgia State also to conclude the in this last 3-game stretch, in addition to James Madison. So, all right, so we'll be keeping an eye on that one with that South Carolina game coming up for UCF men's soccer as well. All right, let's go over to women's soccer real quick. Current status 9-5-1 overall, 45th in the RPI. They finally got off the schneid against Cincinnati with a win up in Cincinnati. They had not won a game in 3 straight. They got the 2 losses to Texas and Baylor at home, and then the draw at Texas Tech. That was a rough home stretch where they didn't win one of those 3 games. That one kind of hurt because
they've been really up and down this year. You know?
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, they had the long 5-game winning streak. At one point, they won 6 out of 7. The only loss was on the road to Oklahoma State. They had the win at Oklahoma, and believe it or not, it's the home games that kind of tripped them up. But now they finish at BYU. And looking at this matchup against BYU, this is one of the best teams in the country. And for them to wrap up, this is the number 2 scoring offense in the country. They are 5-0-3 at home. UCF has to go out to Provo. This is a long road trip against a really good team. And Eric, I'm starting to get a little bit worried here because now UCF at 45 in the RPI, that is very definitely on the bubble.
Oh, yeah. Chris Henderson, who's covered women's soccer for a long time, he just came out with his projections. He has UCF as the first team out going into this match. And he wrote, a win over BYU would get you in. That's good enough to get you in. You lose to BYU, now you got to get some work done in the Big 12 tournament. UCF has clinched a bye in the first round of the Big 12 tournament. The question is, what's going to be their seeding to be a 4 or 5? The bigger concern is obviously the bodies. They've obviously had some injuries. Ellie Marino's been out, etc. And how do they contain this BYU offense, which you mentioned is the second best scoring offense? UCF's struggled at times with possession. That's going to be a key. Plus, you're playing at Provo on a Monday to end the regular season.
It's going to be cold.
It's going to be cold probably. So this is a big match. If they were to get a result against BYU, that would help their NCAA chances. If they upset BYU, I think that puts them in. If they lose to BYU, they may have to win a couple matches in the Big 12 tournament to secure a spot in the NCAA. But that's how thin line it is. And,
on the bubble.
Caroline Delisle is going to be the key. She just had the shutout against Cincinnati, which broke the school record for most shutouts by a goalkeeper, passing Karen Richter. That's pretty big deal in this program, by the way, with all the goalkeepers they've had.
Yeah, I was going to say, and that's my next question to you too, Eric, is where does this put Caroline in the pantheon of UCF goalkeepers?
Well, that's the thing. This is as rich of a position as it gets, right? You're talking Hall of Famers, Elena Reyes, who's played in the Olympics and the World Cup. Kim Wyatt, played in the
Team
U.S.
USA.
national team.
Yep.
Team USA, yeah. Amy Allman, Team USA national ball. Both of those Hall of Famers as well. Karen Richter, who's the Auburn head coach. She's a Hall of Famer. She used to be the head coach of UCF. That's probably your tier 1. I think Delisle's right there at tier 2 with Vera Veras and the rest of the goalkeepers. It's not a knock on her. It just tells you how elite this position is. But I think she's tier 2 there. And it's not done yet. If she were to help this team make the NCAAs this year, maybe let's say they win the Big 12 tournament, something like that, and carry them, then her stock even goes higher than that. But she's probably a slightly below those icons in the sport. But she's had an incredible career. She's been the face of this program really for the last few years. And that record is significant. To have the shutout record for a goalkeeper in UCF soccer is huge.
But it has to be more than her, right? Because especially in this game with BYU, if you're going to get a result, that's one thing. And Nick, I want to turn it over to you here. What do they have to do? What is this team really missing that they're going to need to do against BYU and in the tournament, in the Big 12 tournament, as they get ready? Because I'm looking at it right now, they're in the 5 spot, but they're tied with Texas and West Virginia. That can go either way, especially considering that you're playing against the BYU team that's right up there at the top of the conference. So what do they have to do here?
Based on what I've seen, they got to, from both teams, they got to keep the ball out of their hands. You always hear the whole thing, the best, best offense is a good defense or whatever. Yeah. Flip that. Hold on to the ball as long as you can.
Time of possession. Yeah. Possession's going to be key. You don't want to get peppered with a ton of shots.
Because a lot of games I've seen where UCF is lost, it's because they can't hold on to the ball long enough and the other team gets too many good opportunities. And obviously, as we just discussed, BYU is one of the best scoring teams in the country. So you cannot let them hold on to that ball. You got to be the one to put on the pressure. Like, I don't even know if I'd say pressure, just don't let them, just don't give them opportunities. And I don't mean stay back on defense. I just mean keep it on their side.
Yeah. Keep it in the attacking zone. I'll tell you what really blows my mind here, and you're seeing it right here in the standings as we wrap it up, because I do think BYU can be had, and here's why. Look at that home conference record. BYU is 1-0-3 at home in the Big 12. 5-0 on the road.
Great road team. Huh?
They're really good on the road, but at home in the Big 12,
they're keeping it close.
Yeah. So, and UCF right now this year in conference, 3-1 on the road. Granted, okay, competition, but whatever. It's still hard to win on the road, especially traveling the distances that they've been traveling this year, right? Yeah. So it's not outside the realm of possibility. Texas Tech, by the way, number 1 in the conference, 7-0-2 in the Big 12, 5-0 at home. So that kind of gives you an indication of where the difference is. And Texas Tech is 2 points up on BYU in the standings. The Lady Red Raiders, by the way, 13-0-4 this year, unbeaten so far this year. So that they're clearly the favorite, but they've had. By the way, they've had their struggles on the road. They're 2-0-2 on the road in the conference, 2-0-4 away from away, and 10-0 at home is Texas Tech. But BYU, I think they can be had at home. It's gonna come down to, I think, like you said, Nick, maintaining possession of the ball, limiting the number of opportunities that are sent in Caroline Delisle's direction, such that she can work her magic once again, and then it's off to the conference championship. So
you're saying there's a chance?
Saying there's a chance. The Big 12 Conference Championship, by the way, Round Rock, Texas, Saturday, October 28th through Saturday, November the 4th.
Man, we're really I can't believe we're already getting close to postseason play in so many sports. It's unbelievable.
I'm telling you. Yeah.
We just started.
Last but not, believe me, but Nick, I'm here to tell you, it only gets faster as you get older. Anyway, last but not least, let's talk a little volleyball. Your UCF Knights, ladies and gentlemen, are in the top 25. They came in at 24th in the latest coaches poll. And Eric, we were talking about this beforehand, before we actually got started on the show. UCF, tremendous credit to Jenny Maurer and her players and her staff, because they're sitting right now at 16-2, 7-0 in the Big 12. Texas is number 1 at 9-0. But we talked about how bad the gauntlet would be. And Bryson, by the way, has waxed poetic about this, and he's been warning everyone. So you can't say you weren't warned. These last 11 matches are going to be absolutely brutal because they're all against the top 40 in the RPI. But to UCF's credit, they have not left any winnable matches up until this point on the table, right? No bad losses to this point. So now as they get ready for this stretch, and they're going to start with Baylor, at Baylor coming up on Saturday and Sunday, what's going to be the key right here now? Because stuff is about to get real.
Really real. Baylor's a young team, top 25 in Waco. You got to play 2 matches. How does this young team handle that? Big exposure. Sunday's game is going to be either on ESPN or ESPN2. It's been scheduled for ESPN2, but there's some talk it might get moved to ESPN. You know, it's a big match when Paul Sunderland, the voice of volleyball, is going to call your match. That's kind of a big deal. He's calling it with Jennifer Hoffman, but this will be big. Obviously, Abby Shomers has been fantastic at the setter position. She'll get some recognition. It'll be interesting how they attack Baylor. Baylor's very young themselves, but this gauntlet's incredible. You got Baylor on the road. Then they host TCU, who nearly knocked off Texas on Wednesday night at home. They had a 2-1 lead, lost in 5 sets, 15-13 in the 5th. But this is their opportunity for them. The good news is, Nick, yes, it's a rough 11 matches, but I think if UCF goes 4-7, let's say, you're getting 4 quality wins there. Yeah. That would put you at 20 wins, put you at about 11 conference wins. That would give you 4 top 50 wins, plus the wins against Florida State in the non-conference, which is looking better, and a win against Mississippi State, which you hope stays in the top 50. Mississippi State upset Florida last week. That's 6 top 50 wins. That would be good enough to make the NCAA tournament for this team, which would be a huge success considering who you lost, in particular the greatest player in the history of the program at McKenna Melville, Nick.
Yeah, they didn't just lose anyone. They lost the greatest, and yet they're still kicking. And, exactly. And you pretty much hit it all on the nail. Like, they don't need to go perfect here or anything. They just need to get a few. Would you say 4 is the
I think 4 wins. If they could go 4-7 minimum, that should be enough to get them in. I think that would keep the RPI in the 30s. I think that's good enough. And that's the advantage of being in the Big 12 is you have room for error. Whereas if you're in a league like the American, UCF, if the UCF went 4-7 in the American, they would be completely out of the picture for the NCAAs. But 4-7 in this stretch, I think is good enough to get in.
Well, I remember last year, Eric, right? We were talking about all year about how it was a 2-horse race between UCF and Houston, and whichever one blinked was going to be in trouble. Right?
That's correct.
But now I think you're 100% right. Like, 4-7, that can definitely get you in, because that would also get you 20 wins, and I think that's huge.
20 wins. It's 4 wins against top 40, top 50 teams, plus the win against FSU, plus a win against Mississippi State. I think that would be more than enough to get them into the field. Maybe go to Gainesville as a 3 seed, which wouldn't be the worst thing in the world, because Florida's
don't send us to Gainesville again.
Well, so here's the deal with the volleyball. Remember, they're seeding 32 teams.
Right.
So if you're UCF, to be a top 32 seed, you probably got to be inside the top 32 RPI, more than likely. If not, if you're like 34, 35, 36, then you're a 3 seed, which means you're pretty much eligible to be bust if that's what they choose to do. So they would probably be bust to Florida in that scenario. Florida, by the way, is playing without their setter, who's out for the year with a torn ACL. So they're not as strong as they were earlier in the year. The other interesting thing about the seeding will be is I've learned the committees in all sports are not only just using the RPI formula for data, but they're using this thing called the KPI, which was created by a guy named Kevin Paga, who works at Michigan State. This is something that they've been pushing just to give the committee more data, more information to help them pick the at-larges, basically. So
how is it different? How is that different than, like, how does the KPI differ from the RPI?
Because I've spoken to Kevin about it in the past. It's more of, instead of just saying, well, you're playing this team that's got a win-loss record. Well, how did they get that win-loss record? But more so, what was the quality of the match? Did you win? I don't know if margin necessarily is a factor, but if you win 4-0, you're going to get rewarded more than if you win 2-1 in a soccer match, for example.
I think you're right.
Like okay. So there's slightly some differences, a little bit. Where the match is played, home, away, neutral, that's still a part of it. But it's basically the goal is to kind of figure out, okay, we're trying to eliminate kind of the manipulation, because a lot of coaches have been able to figure out how to eliminate and manipulate the RPI.
Todd Dagenet was very good at that in his last few years at UCF, and he'll admit it too.
So the KPI is trying to eliminate some of that. So we'll see how it goes. We'll see how the committee approaches that. And and I'm kind of monitoring both. The good news for volleyball is the KPI actually likes them more than the RPI does. I think the KPI has them like at 31, whereas the RPI has them at 36.
Okay.
Which I could see the committee kind of using both and just evening it out. Like, oh, they're 31, 36. Let's just put them as a 32 or 33, something like that.
Right.
So we'll see what happens. But for this team, it's more about, I'm curious to see how the Ava Armors in the world handle the spotlight here this weekend against Baylor, who has size, a ton of it. And it'll be interesting, too, if they attack them from that standpoint. But this is a big opportunity. First ever regular season UCF volleyball match on linear television this Sunday against Baylor.
That's right. Last time they were on linear TV was Cincinnati and Jordan Thompson, but that was the AAC championship. Our old friend Tiffany Green called that match, Eric Lopez, so back in the day. So, all right. That's going to wrap it up for us real quick. Nick, where are you going to be this weekend? Where are you going to see you?
Where are we going? I'll be on night shift right after the game.
All right. I'm going to be following that pretty closely. Eric, what about you? What do you got planned?
I will be going to DeLand on Friday, catch a little fall ball, UCF softball's fall ball debut. They play Stetson, a lot of expectations there. And then I'll be hosting, obviously, Night Shift with Nick and Kyle and Bryson after the Oklahoma
See
game.
if I could get in with you guys maybe after.
Hey, there you go.
Hey.
See if we can
rotations. We could set some rotations there, like the hockey shifts.
The percentage chance that I join is roughly equivalent to roughly proportional to the percentage chance of UCF winning the game. It's like if we win, I'm in. If not, you know how it is, man. I got to kind of decompress, right? You know,
you win. That's a party stream.
Yeah. So yeah, break out the party. All right. Huge thanks to you for listening. Make sure you catch our podcast, the Night Shift podcast, wherever you listen to your podcasts on Apple or Android devices. Huge thanks to Kyle, the SOTG, on social media channels. Nick is at Nick Porcelli 2, Eric at Eric Lopez Elo. You can find me on Threads at Jeff.Sharon. Don't forget to follow Bryson Turner as well. And also Andrew Glukoff, Stat Boy Drew, as well on social media. Thanks again to everybody for listening. And you don't forget to follow us on our team social media accounts, UCF Banneret _SBN on X, Black and Gold Banneret on Threads and Instagram, Facebook.com/Black and Gold Banneret, and of course our YouTube channel. Look for us on Black and Gold Banneret, where you will see Night Shift following UCF against Oklahoma, which kicks off at noon on Saturday on ABC. For Eric, Nick, Kyle, Bryson, all of us here at Black and Gold Banneret and the Night Shift podcast, I'm Jeff Sharon saying thanks for listening. Enjoy the weekend. We will see you after UCF against Oklahoma in Norman on Saturday. Take care, folks. Enjoy.